Yo, people, what's up? JP, Florida employment lawyer. I'm going to talk today about wrongful termination. So if you're going through a situation like this, start with this video right here because it's going to give you the basics and it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of expectations that will shortly be shattered, okay? Wrongful termination, people. Let's be real about what that means. Every single week, we have hundreds of people contact our law firm and they say, I was wrongfully terminated. I want to sue. I was wrongfully terminated. I want to know my rights. I was wrongfully terminated and I want to negotiate a severance package. Well, I hate to be such a bald-headed jerk-face meanie, but I would like somebody to deliver me a Choco Taco and $10 million right now, and that's just not going to happen. I'm sorry, okay? There's what you would like or what you want, and then there is the reality of the situation. Wrongful termination has nothing to do with your concept of fairness, okay? When we're talking about wrongful termination, what we really mean is legally wrongful termination or unlawful termination, right? So get rid of the concept of wrongful termination in your head and start thinking of it as illegal or unlawful termination, all right? And as a threshold matter there, you have to understand just because something is unfair, even if it's extremely unfair, doesn't mean it's illegal. Just because you're fired and it was unfair, it was based on a lie, there are no facts against you, the company told you one thing but did another, people ganged up on you, your voice wasn't heard, you weren't given the right training, the list goes on and on and on. All of these things, yes, are real, they happen, they are unfair, but they do not equate to unlawful or illegal termination. When we talk about wrongful termination, right, because the term is thrown around out there, we talk about wrongful termination, remember, illegal termination. What is illegal, okay? What is unlawful? What makes firing somebody unlawful? And there, to unpack that, I have to qualify this by saying that there are differences in certain states, okay? You look at California, you look at New York, you're going to have more worker protections or more labor protections than you have in a place like Florida or a place like Texas. But coming at it from the perspective of Florida law, and generally in a majority of states, illegal termination has to violate or contravene very specific categories or buckets of law, okay? One is discrimination. You cannot be terminated if that action against you is based on your race, your age, disability, religion, sex, the list goes on and on, right? National origin, ancestry, etc. But that is generally, the first sort of big bucket of what constitutes an unlawful termination. If the termination is based on a protected demographic classification. So if you're terminated, again, based on age, race, religion, sex, national origin, etc., the list goes on and on. But those are specific demographic categories, right? That's bigotry, okay? That's bigotry. Now, a lot of people, they say, it wasn't explicitly based on my age or my race or what have you. It's just that, my supervisor didn't like me, from the jump. He was always out to get me. I'm sorry, folks, but unless that special mistreatment was somehow tied to a specific demographic category or classification, you're not going to have a discrimination claim. And discrimination is one variant of unlawful termination. What's the second big bucket? The second big bucket, in my view, is retaliation, okay? Retaliation. And again, people will throw around retaliation and they don't have a clear legal understanding of what the concept is. Retaliation means you engaged in protected activity, and in response to that protected activity, the company took an adverse action against you. There are several varieties of retaliation. We see retaliation in the discrimination context related to that bucket, where somebody complains about racism or age discrimination or sexual harassment or what have you, and complaining about that, registering a concern with the company, with corporate, with HR, with the boss, with the powers that be. That is protected conduct, okay? So if you do that, if you report discrimination or some other unlawful behavior against you, and that's the kicker right there, what you report, even if it's not borne out to be true, even if you can't ultimately prove it, if what you report is illegal conduct, and then you are retaliated against for that reporting, then you potentially have a viable retaliation claim. But again, so many of these things, the logic all flows together. It all goes in the same direction because, people say, well, I was singled out, I was targeted, so I think I have a discrimination claim. No, not unless there was discrimination tied to your age, race, religion, sex, etc. Okay? And the same thing with retaliation. People say, well, I reported my my manager for not doing things the right way and not listening to my input, and then I got fired. So I think it was retaliation. Again, that's not retaliation. That's not retaliation. Because what you reported, your manager not listening to you, not hearing your voice, not doing things the right way, what you reported was not illegal, okay? You have to always bring it back when you're thinking about wrongful termination, which is a misnomer and should be classified as illegal or unlawful termination. When you're thinking about cases or claims in this general wheelhouse or universe, you have to always bring it back to conduct that is illegal or unlawful. And that is where you really have a hook for a viable claim. So you have discrimination, you have retaliation. And when we look at retaliation, a lot of the retaliation claims that are viable and that are strong are situations where somebody reported specific discrimination or sexual harassment, and then they were retaliated against, where their hours were cut, they were unfavorably reassigned, or they were outright fired from their job. That's retaliation. But there are several other variants of retaliation, okay? Another big bucket of the retaliation bucket, like a sub bucket, is whistleblower retaliation. And whistleblower retaliation, again, this depends on the state. When we think of whistleblower retaliation, at least to me, I conceptualize that as different than somebody who's retaliated against for reporting, i.e. racism, right? Whistleblower retaliation is more in the direction of the company is doing something that is illegal. And yes, racism, racial discrimination, that's illegal, but this is a separate flavor. This is more along the lines of the company is committing tax fraud, or the company is dumping toxic waste in the river next door, or the company is defrauding its investors and shareholders. And, you go to the powers that be and you say, hey, we can't do this, okay? This is illegal. Like, we need to stop this right now. I'm not going along with it. And then a couple days later, a couple weeks later, you're out the door. Now, companies, not to sidetrack this too much, okay? But so I have a case I'm working on right now that's out of Maryland, and we're about to file this. It's a new lawsuit. The guy was working for a tech-related company, And the company, he found this out. He was the chief technology officer, and he found this out after about, a year on the job. He could never make things add up, right, in terms of their performance and their metrics and sort of what they were offering customers and what they were representing as their capabilities. And it never made sense to him. And he was always trying to figure out, like, what's he missing? Well, he finally cracked the code and realized, oh my God, the company's just lying. We're just lying about what our capabilities are. And so our customers downstream have all kinds of security vulnerabilities and flaws because they're relying on fraudulent shit that we have said and put out into the market when we can't do anything that comes even close to that. So these customers and clients have all kinds of vulnerabilities that, we really are responsible for because they were relying on us, and we defrauded them by falsely representing our capabilities, okay? Very, very ugly case, and there's a good chance it could bankrupt a publicly traded company. We'll see. It'll be really interesting. But that is whistleblower retaliation, because that guy blows the whistle to the handful of people above him, and he was written up that day, some kind of corrective action against him. And then within a matter of weeks, he was terminated. So when we think about retaliation, we've got those different buckets. We've got the discrimination, where you report discrimination, retaliate against. We also have the whistleblower retaliation. And then you have a couple other very specific categories of retaliation, right? Where if you inquire about payment of overtime wages and you're fired for that, right? That's FLSA or unpaid wage retaliation. If you file a workers' compensation claim and you're fired or otherwise, treated in an adverse manner, like materially adverse, not just, somebody was mean, but like your hours got cut, you lost your job, you were unfavorably reassigned, they docked your wages, etc. They put you on the night shift, whatever it is, right? That, can go in the bucket of workers' comp retaliation. And there's a handful of other specific retaliations. There's retaliation for testifying in a court proceeding or a regulatory proceeding against the company. But those are very specific categories of retaliation. So when you think about wrongful termination, remember, you always have to bring it back to something unlawful. Bring it back to illegal termination, being fired for an illegal reason. That's really what we're talking about. And so you either, in my view, have a discrimination claim or you have a retaliation claim. And outside of discrimination and retaliation, for engaging in some sort of protected activity and then being fired as a result of it, there's not really a whole lot beyond the confines of that specific universe. So if you're in a situation where you were fired, you were laid off, you were let go, it seems unfair, do not get yourself fixated on this notion that you have a whole bunch of rights and remedies and leverage and can negotiate a severance and everything else. You really don't have claims against the company in this wheelhouse unless you have discrimination or some variant of retaliation. And remember, the discrimination has to be tied to a specific demographic classification. Hope this is helpful. It might not be what you wanted to hear, but it's what you needed to hear. Jonathan Pollard, thanks for watching. Have a great day.